How do you do? October 2018. Devon had begun to assimilate into the university environment in London. She used that word loosely. She would tell anyone who would listen, her mom, her friends from home, the coffee man, that she was assimilating. It couldn't have been further from the truth. In the months since she had gotten to London, she had done little but hang out with her Fordham classmates. They had gone to American bars and begun forging friendships with the other study abroad students. In truth, Devon found the experience to be lackluster and mildly disappointing. If she had wanted to stay in the same environment, she would have spent the year at Fordham. This thought flitted across her mind as she sat in the university coffee shop. She'd begun to hang out here more often than not, if only to get out of her flat. She had yet to meet most of her roommates due to conflicting schedules. She kept hearing someone cooking at 2 a.m., but never quite got up the courage to go see who it was. Besides, if they saw her through the kitchen door, what excuse would she have? Oh, just wildly thirsty at 2 a.m.? If they fell for that, she had bigger problems. She sighed. She would eventually make friends. It was only a matter of time, as her mother would say. She wanted friends, but she wanted more. She wanted to find something that motivated her. She wanted to feel the exact moment of expansiveness she felt when she would hear a song at the perfect moment. It would feel as though the universe were aligning just for her. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed someone waving at her. Christian approached slowly, as if she were an animal he was scared of frightening away. All good, Dev? He gestured to the chair across from her, and she nodded that it was open. She closed her laptop and slid her books out of his way. Given his long legs and lanky stature, she was surprised Christian fit so well into the tinier than normal coffeehouse chairs. Hey, long time no see. How are things? She had, in fact, been seeing quite a lot of him recently. In the weeks since their arrival, Kira had jumped into hyperdrive about planning Paris. This included weekly dinners and group planning sessions. Devon tried not to think too much into that she often found herself sitting next to Christian. She was somehow always aware of his presence until Joe walked in. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but when Joe was in the room, it was as though Christian shrunk. Good, just. Oh, shoot, sorry, hang on. She watched as he pulled a buzzing phone out of his pocket. Mom? Hey, one sec. He gestured to Devon that he was headed outside. She watched as he walked out of the coffee shop. The backwards cap, his crewneck sweatshirt pulled worn at the sleeves from what she assumed was an old habit. Objectively, Christian was not her type, but she could fully understand how someone would find him attractive. He gave her "I could bake you muffins in the morning" vibes, and somehow it worked for him. She watched as suddenly his body language changed. It was as though an electric shock ran through him and he froze upright. His hand moved to his mouth. He looked left and right, his back still to her. He couldn't take her eyes off of him. Something was wrong, very wrong. It was as though time moved in slow motion. She watched as he dropped his hand from his mouth, and just as it hit his side, he lifted it back to run through his hair. She watched as he didn't notice hordes of people flooding into the shop around him as the class had let out. They moved around his body, some throwing a cautious, worried glance over their shoulder as they entered. It wasn't until he turned around and locked eyes with her that she knew someone had died. He didn't need to say it. She knew it. It was the scary sixth sense that people had, unexplainable and yet nonetheless true. Without thinking, she got up from her seat and went outside. Christian was pale as a ghost. He looked like he would pass out. She raised a hand to his arm and gave him the "Are you okay?" with her eyes. He looked back at her, bewildered. They stood like that for a long time. Devon wasn't quite sure how long. She imagined it had to be over a half hour as the crowd died down and surged once more before she went back inside to retrieve their things. Christian hadn't spoken a word. He held the phone up to his ear like a lifeline. She heard murmurs of his mom's voice, but everything was jumbled. She couldn't quite make out what was going on. She followed Christian back to his dorm. He sat down on the stoop as she rifled through his things for his ID badge. When they got inside, she followed him up to his room and put his stuff down on the bed. She hesitated by the door. She should leave. This didn't feel like something she should be here for. She heard him say, "Okay, yes, I understand. I love you. I'll catch the next flight out." When she looked at him in the eyes, she saw what happened to a person when they shattered. And years later, she would tell this story to only a select few. She would tell everything up until this exact point and purposefully leave out the key details of what had happened next. She kept her eyes on him as he hung up, and his phone slid out of his hand, landing with a thud onto the floor. When he didn't move, she went to pick it up. She could feel the shaking before she saw it. His whole body shook with tears. It began with his hands as he tried to get the words out. He gestured wildly into the air, trying to articulate something, anything that would make sense. She watched as he opened his mouth to cry, scream, curse even, but nothing came out. He breathed in deeply, and she thought he might choke from the sheer effort of trying to get oxygen into his lungs. Christian, look at me. You're okay. I'm here. You're okay. She put her hands on his arms and guided him to the bed, coaxing him to sit down. He put his head between his knees. When he came up for air, he rested his head in his hands, his elbows digging perfect circles into the tops of his kneecaps. She rubbed his back. She had no idea what to do. She did what her mom would do when something bad happened. Whisper, you're okay, over and over and over again until she believed it. His body still shaking, she felt him take one deep breath. My dad died. The air left his body as he passed out from the shock. Devin sat there holding on to him as he regained consciousness, brushing the hair back from his forehead as he came to. They stayed like that a good long while Christian eventually curling into a ball, his head in her lap. In the years that followed, she would leave this part out as well. She would end the story with something pithy like, oh, I'm not sure what happened. To be honest, I never asked, but I've seen him since. I'm sure he's fine. She would never betray his trust. She would never betray that on the night that his father died, she was the one who held him together when his world fell apart. And in truth, she would do it over again in a heartbeat, no questions asked. The reconnect. Devin hovered over her phone. She had opened a new text and her thumb was currently wavering over his name. When Joe had texted her his number, she hadn't told him the truth, that she had had his number memorized because she never saved it. She had spoken to Christian regularly over the years, but she could never bring herself to save his name in her contacts. That felt too formal. But she was an adult now, with a new job, and in a desperate need of a new apartment. She could save his info once and for all. Come on, Devin, get a hold of yourself. She ignored the looks from a passerby as she gave herself a pep talk. She had already drafted the text. It was light, a check-in of sorts. Isn't it funny type story of her running into Kira and Joe. She hoped Christian wouldn't see through it. In all likelihood, he would. In all likelihood, Joe had already texted him about their run-in, let him know about her situation, probably even given him a detailed account of how she looked these days. Maybe that was going too far. Joe probably had said something like, remember Devin from college? She's looking for a roommate. You have an open spot? She looked down at her phone once more. She had to remember that people were a lot calmer than she gave them credit for. She, too, could be a calm person. Hey, I ran into Joe last night when I was grabbing a drink with Kira. Remember her? And he mentioned your roommate was moving out in a few weeks. Any chance you want to live with me? She hit send before she could rethink it. Within seconds, her phone buzzed. Seriously, Devin? Did you decide to talk to me because you're desperate or because you miss me? Okay, she deserved that. She couldn't scroll through their previous texts because she always deleted them after she became frustrated with him. She was pretty certain she had blown him off in their last conversation because he'd skipped seeing her to spend time with his friends. In the moment, it had felt right, kind of like she was punishing him for choosing other people over her. That was the thing about Christian. When given the option, he always chose someone else over her. I get it. No need to be mean about it. I'm texting you because I do need a place to live. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of agreeing that yes, she was desperate. Of course you do. She could feel his eye roll through the screen. Come over later, I'll show you the room. He texted her the address. She scoffed. He didn't even bother to ask when she was available to see it. Typical Christian. Hopping off the N train at 9th Street, Devin took stock of her surroundings. She rarely came to Brooklyn. It wasn't just because she was a city girl. It was because for the last 5 years, she had basically lived in Astor Place. The hours at the theater were unpredictable, and she was often getting called in at a moment's notice. One day she would be needed at 6 p.m., the next 6 a.m. She tirelessly paid rent on a shoebox studio for a few years, but she barely saw the place. For her, it was a crash pad. Walking towards Christian, the air felt cleaner. Perhaps it was because she could see the sky more fully. She heard children's laughter in the nearby school playground. She watched as parents pushed toddlers and strollers on their way towards home. In all, it looked and felt like a place where life could be lived as opposed to being tolerated like in the city. She followed Google Maps to an apartment building just off the street of shops. She had no idea where she was. She noted a few restaurants, a corner bar with twinkly lights and some cute shops. She tried to imagine herself living here. She could see herself texting Christian after a long day asking if he wanted to get a drink. They'd meet at the corner bar without needing to confirm it with each other first. The bartenders would know them. They'd greet them with the familiarity of locals. Maybe she'd even think they were a couple. She shook her head. Get a grip, Devin. Yeah, get a grip, Devin. She jumped. Of course, Christian would be standing there. She couldn't tell if he was annoyed or amused. His lips smirked in a way that was hard to read. She had never seen him use that expression on anyone but her. It would be charming if it was a look of amusement, but more often than not, it was the reverse for annoyance. She looked at him and then back up the building. She refused to give him the upper hand. So, this is it? If by this you mean the apartment you're pretty much desperate for, then yes, this is it. I'm not desperate. He hummed as he stepped around her, pulling out his keys. I'd say you coming to Brooklyn is pretty desperate. You hate Brooklyn. I do not. He looked over her shoulder as he unlocked the door. Devin, you spent the entirety of 2019 telling me that you hated Brooklyn, that if I moved here, you would under no circumstance ever come and visit me. She recalled those conversations. In retrospect, she may have been a little harsh. What she really had meant to articulate was that she wouldn't go to see him if he wasn't willing to come see her. That was the line in the sand. Well, look at me now. I'm here, in Brooklyn, with you. So let's get on with it. He let out a chuckle as he opened the door, barely holding it open, leaving Devin to trail behind. She followed him wordlessly up 4 flights to his apartment, biting her tongue. She would not give him the satisfaction of knowing that she was in fact woefully out of shape, and she felt like her heart might burst if he asked her to climb one more flight. He unlocked his front door and she stepped inside. She was hit by a flood of sunlight and plants. Why were there so many plants? Come on in, take your shoes off. He said it as a demand rather than an ask. Devin rolled her eyes. This dynamic would need some reworking if this became her reality. She walked further in and she focused on her surroundings. She was standing in a hallway with herringbone floors. Christian had disappeared somewhere in front of her, so she took her time. To her right was a bedroom. She noticed a Fordham poster taped onto one of the walls. She peeked inside. Bed messy, shoes on the floor, a large armoire stuffed high with what looked like a dozen of baseball caps and t-shirts. Dev, stop snooping, he called from down the hall. She followed the sound of his voice and passed a kitchen. It was old and still had the 1950s cream cabinets with seafoam green formica countertops. She saw a plant hanging in the window with a small table tucked underneath, and beside it had 2 chairs. She imagined waking up in the morning and waiting for her coffee to brew as she stood in this kitchen. It felt oddly comforting. Passing the kitchen, she entered the room with the plants. It was a living room of sorts. She noticed a ratty couch, an old leather armchair, and the bookshelves full of sports memorabilia. Here she found Christian fiddling with the TV, combing through the channels. She looked to her right. A bright, airy room with double French doors sat virtually empty except for a cabinet stocked high with booze. She imagined it could make for a great bedroom. She would get curtains to close off the windows. It would be far away from Christian and all of her stuff would fit. What did this used to be? Andy's room? Christian let out a scoff. Ha, you wish. No, that's the dining room. Andy took the dining room table with him when he moved out. We used it as an office, but when Andy's girlfriend would come over, we'd move all of our shit out and have family dinner together. She liked the idea of Christian having people to dinner. She didn't know why she always visualized him as a solo entity, someone without friends. Perhaps she was projecting her own insecurities onto him. So, can I use it as a bedroom? Jesus. Devin, seriously? No, it's a dining room. There's meant to be a table there, or at least desks. What's the big deal? It's not a big deal. If it were a bedroom, it would disrupt the flow of the apartment. Plus, your bedroom is the last room, farthest away from everything. From you mean? That too. She moved out of the dining room and passed another seafoam green room. This time a bathroom with a matching sink, tub, and toilet of all the same hue. When she found the very last door, she was afraid to peek her head in. It was smaller than Christian's. She would basically fit a bed and a nightstand if she was lucky. But it had a double-door closet which had built-in shelves. She thanked whatever gods were up there for looking out for her. She saw the hooks around the room from the previous pictures hung up and began to visualize what could go where. Good enough for you? Christian leaned on the doorway. It's fine. It will work. Cool. First 2 months of rent is due on move-in. When do you want to show up? Devin's jaw dropped open. Surely he could make an exception for her. You seriously need the first 2 months' rent? That's absurd. No, Devin, that's common sense. You show up out of nowhere after months of not hearing from you, asking me for a place to live with literally zero context, and you don't expect me to want to feel a little more sure about this arrangement? He had a point. She hadn't considered the optics. Fine. First 2 months' rent on move-in, I'll see you in 3 weeks. 3 weeks? I could get another renter here in 3 weeks. I don't know what you want me to tell you, Chris. I don't have the money. You have to wait 3 weeks until I get my first paycheck, all of which will be paying your 2 months of rent, by the way. She watched as his demeanor changed. Shit, I'm sorry, I didn't know. When did it get this bad? She shrugged. Christian had always had a vague awareness that Devon was shit with money. Sure, her parents had always bailed her out, but in the few conversations they had had, Christian was always saving and Devon was always floundering. It was the one thing at the theater. It was one thing that the theater world paid poorly. It was another that she spent money as though it was disposable. It was always slipping through her fingers. Yeah, it's not great, but anyway, 3 weeks okay? She looked at him in the eyes this time. It was there that she saw what she needed to. Beneath the tough asshole exterior, he was still Christian Parker, the boy she weathered grief with. Don't worry about it. Move in whenever and pay me when you have the money. She nodded a thanks and looked back at the room. This would work. It had to. 2018. He left the next morning. Devin would find out from Beth, who had heard it from Kira, that he had caught the first flight back home as soon as he could. He would fly into JFK and then catch the train down to Baltimore. He needed to get there immediately. I can't believe this, Beth said for the fourth time that morning. She and Devin had gotten into a routine of Wednesday morning croissants and cappuccinos before their class. Devin brushed some of her own croissant crumbs off of her shirt and shook her head in disbelief for more than the fourth time that day. She had found herself doing it unknowingly, brushing her teeth, shaking her head, putting on clothes for the day, and sighing loudly. It was as if her body didn't know what to do with someone else's grief. She had known people who had died before. Her grandparents had passed away on both sides when she was younger. She had attended funerals and held others' hands as they grieved. But Christian was different. With Christian, she had been a witness to the exact moment death struck without warning. It was senseless and heartbreaking and scary all at once. When she had left his apartment late last night, the first thing that she did was call home. She wanted, no, she needed to hear her parents' voice. The predictability that they would be watching their favorite BBC drama in the den gave her a comfort she didn't know she ached for until then. It's awful. Devin brought her attention back to Beth. He has to be so scared. She imagined Christian sitting on the plane, 8 hours trapped with his thoughts. If it were her, she would will herself to sleep to avoid the drama and hurt of it all. She would drink cheap alcohol from the bar cart and wait until it worked. And then she would curl up in a ball and force herself to close her eyes and not think about it. But she knew Christian. Despite the fact that they rarely talked, she had gotten so used to his presence that she could pretty much predict what he would do. He would be pragmatic about it. He would board the plane, put his stuff in the overhead compartment, he would take a seat, fold the tray table down and leave his cell phone, his headphones, and a portable charger there. He would take the book he had brought with him and wedge it into the side of the seat, and then he would aimlessly scroll through the movies, picking one with Will Ferrell or something. Once the plane had taken off, then and only then would he give himself one moment to acknowledge that he was flying home to see his family. One member less, of course. And he would push that grief back down until the moment he got off the train in Baltimore and hugged his mom. Only then would he weep, not just for himself, but for her, the woman who had just unexpectedly lost the love of her life. I don't know what I would do if that happened to me. Do you think he'll come back? I mean, with everything going on, it's unlikely, no? Beth looked back at Devin expectantly, as if she were the genie who knew all the answers. She had no idea what would happen next. This was never the plan. They were all supposed to exist in London for 3 more months of reverie and joy and abandon. No one thought to think of a contingency, what if? It felt morbid to think, what if someone dies? And yet, here they were. I don't know. I guess that's a decision he has to make with his family. I don't know how this works, to be honest. Beth would get her answer a week later. The girls had gone to the pub to meet Kira and Joe for dinner. Devin was shocked to see Christian sitting there nonchalantly. She had kind of expected him to text her and let her know his plans. She tried it herself. He owed her nothing. He had much more important things to worry about than letting a practical stranger know when he would be returning to London, or even if he would. Oh my God, Christian, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. We missed you. Beth immediately enveloped him in a hug. Devin was grateful to follow her lead. She was uncomfortable around him now. It wasn't his fault. It was her own hyper-awareness of feeling connected to him and distant all at once. In the hours after it had happened, she felt more deeply connected to him than anyone in her life ever before. She supposed it had to do with the general shock and trauma of it all, but even still, something ran deeper. It felt like she and Christian had been tied together with a string, an invisible thread that wove between their lives from that critical moment. Devin watched as Christian stood up to enter Beth's open embrace. She hadn't really given him a chance. Beth's Midwestern grace and friendliness were overpowering. She would hug Christian whether or not he wanted to be. Devin supposed he was used to it by now, used to strangers offering unsolicited condolences and forced hugs or pats on the back. She watched as he robotically hugged her back, his body not quite embracing her. It seemed, if anything, like he was tolerating her embrace. Beth released him after a beat too long and looked him in the eyes. "We're here for you, you know. We're your family abroad. Whatever you need, don't hesitate." That seemed like a stretch. Did Christian really want a bunch of college students to be his surrogate family? Surely they could be capable of replacing his actual family. Surely they couldn't be capable of replacing his actual family. The people back in the States also growing through this together. "Thanks, Beth. I appreciate it." He gently pushed her away and locked eyes with Devin. She could have easily hugged him, but she panicked. "Hey, it's really good to see you." She put an awkward hand on his arm. Jesus, could she be any weirder? She should have followed Beth's lead and given him a hug, but somehow that felt too intimate. He looked down at his arm and back up at Devin, wincing slightly. "Thanks. It's good to see you too." "All right, people, let's focus." Joe had called their attention back to the table. "Paris is still on. Now that Christian's back, the plans remain the same. We're going to leave next Friday and catch the bus at 5 a.m. I am not hauling your asses out of bed, so set your alarms. If you miss the bus, we'll see you when we get back." There was a collective groan from the table. 5 a.m. had seemed like a great idea when they were booking tickets. They'd arrive in Paris by early morning, have a full day, but at present, 5 a.m. seemed absolutely daunting and unimaginable. "I've gone ahead and paired everyone off." Devin caught Christian chuckle under his breath as Kira piped up. Of course, she had thought ahead. "I've read that the seats on the buses are super small, so I think it's best Joe and Christina I've read that the seats on the bus are super small, so I think it's best that Joe and Christian, you guys don't sit directly next to each other." Devin couldn't quite figure out where Kira was going with this. It had become apparent she had a thing for Joe, but this seemed excessive, even by Devin's standards. She had read enough teen romance novels to know that this was a manipulative stretch. "So, Joe, you'll sit with me. Beth, I've put you with Andy, and Devin, it'll be you and Christian." She looked pointedly at Devin as if willing her to put up a fight. Devin didn't have the energy. If Kira wanted to move them into seats so she could get hours of crammed travel time with Joe, so be it. It was too bad Kira didn't seem to notice that Joe had a wandering eye for pretty much everyone but her. "Sounds good, thanks, Kira," Christian spoke softly. It seemed to take all the energy out of him. Devin looked at him for the first time with actual focus. The bags under his eyes were heavy. He was thinner than a week ago. He seemed hollow, even fragile. He was already soft-spoken to begin with, but something about death seemed to make him feel breakable and unsteady in her eyes. The conversation moved on from Paris and back to the mundanities of their lives. Who had hooked up with a random stranger in the club last week who was still struggling to understand coursework? Every once in a while, Devin would feel someone's eyes on her. She wrongfully assumed it would always be Christian's. Somehow each time she looked up, she locked eyes with Joe. Neon lights. They say the neon lights are bright on Broadway. At 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, they were glaring. Devin squinted behind her sunglasses as she walked down the block towards her first theater of the day. Per Christine's email, she was supposed to meet Dave Ingram in the morning, when the theater opened. She sipped her iced coffee. It was 7:56. The public had opened at 8 a.m. to staff and crew. She assumed the schedule still applied to the CDI group. She patted herself on the back for being early. She had no idea what the day was about to entail, but she didn't care. There was a paycheck in her future, and if it involved being in a theater, she would be more than happy to do whatever she asked for. A half hour later, Devin wasn't feeling so joyful. Dave Ingram was nowhere to be found, and her coffee had kicked in, making her both antsy and desperate to pee. It was a dicey situation at best. She checked her phone for the 30th time. Still no messages or emails. Where was this guy? Hedging her bets that someone would be around, she walked to the box office and knocked on the window. After a few moments, an older woman popped her head in around the corner. "Sorry, love, we're not open. Come back around 4 if you're looking for same-day tickets." She had the faintest hint of a Welsh accent. "Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm not looking for tickets. My name is Devin. I'm supposed to be meeting Mr. Ingram here, but he's running a bit late. I was hoping I could use your restroom." The woman eyed her cautiously. It was unlikely that at 8 a.m. there would be a nefarious reason for wanting to get inside the theater, especially by a woman who appeared to be in desperate need of the loo, judging by the way she was bouncing on her feet. "All right, come on in. I haven't seen Mr. Ingram yet today. Devin, you said your name was? You might want to give his wife Christine a call if you're lost. He doesn't tend to show up until 10 or later on Mondays, with the theater being closed and all." It was at that moment that Devin realized she had made a mistake. It was Monday. The theater was, in fact, closed, as it was every single Monday. Christine had alluded to the theater being open. If she had heard about this, she would think that Devin was a complete idiot. Who shows up on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. to a closed theater? She flushed with embarrassment. Oh, God, I am so sorry. I just remembered it's Monday and you guys are closed. I'm sorry I got the day wrong. New to the industry, are you? Well, welcome to your unofficial first day of work, and you can still use the staff bathroom. I'm assuming you're staff if you're here to meet Mr. Ingram at this god-awful hour. The woman gave a slight chuckle and grabbed her keys. She disappeared for a few moments before appearing at the main entrance. She ushered Devin in. I'm Betsy. Welcome to the Gershwin. Devin thanked her profusely before making a beeline for the bathroom on the left. When she exited, she found Betsy right where she left her. Since you're already here, would you like a tour? Devin nodded enthusiastically. She'd been in this theater before for shows, but had never been backstage. She followed Betsy down the aisles with rows and rows of seats waiting to be filled. She pointed up to the ornate ceiling and the old box seats that were remnants of the original design. She led Devin around the side to the back of the stage, and suddenly she was in the wings. Go on, you know you want to. Betsy gave Devin a slight push onto the stage. She tripped forward and caught her balance. She had never been center stage before. She enjoyed the work that went into building a show, curating the people and the skill sets required to take a show from idea to event. She rarely, if ever, engaged with actors. Their paths just didn't seem to cross. But being center stage and looking out at the empty seats rife with expectations, she suddenly understood what it means to feel in control. She understood what it could feel like to be the person who held everyone's attention. With each note, each line spoken, she had the power to elicit emotions held so deeply inside that when they left, they would say, I can't remember the last time I felt that. She looked back over her shoulder at Betsy, who gave her a massive smile, then a wave calling her back to the wings. There now. Welcome to Broadway. Devin smiled wholeheartedly. She'd been waiting to hear those words her whole life. We were staying in Paris, October 2018. This is quite possibly the worst idea we've ever had, Beth mumbled into Devin's shoulder as she tried to get some sleep in the bus depot. It was 4:48 in the morning, and it was freezing cold. Devin didn't know why she expected a bus depot to be warm at this hour, but the shock of the warm bed to an ice-cold bench was disorienting to everyone involved. The girls sat huddled together, waiting for the rest of their group. They had decided to meet at the depot due to opposing views on how long it would take them to get there. Joe had said he required no less than 3 minutes to get ready and would not leave the dorm until the last possible moment. Christian and Andy agreed that a 10-minute grace period seemed like a healthy amount. Kira had been vague. She was an early bird, but she had something to do and would meet everyone there. It was down to Devin and Beth, who mutually agreed that a half hour was the only viable amount of time that would leave them unrushed and self-assured they were in the right place. That was until they arrived and realized that everything, including the bathrooms, were closed at this hour. Devin stared at the sign across from her once more. By now, she had it memorized. All shops close between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6:15 a.m. Any passenger in need of assistance should report to the field manager's office, door 217 in the East Wing. No phone number, no email, just a random door. She would hold her pee for 3 more days before she knocked on that door and risked getting murdered. Where is everybody? It's almost time. Beth was shivering. Her t-shirt and sweatshirt were no match for the practically Arctic temperatures. Devin checked her phone. 4:53 a.m. Other passengers were starting to arrive and queue up. They didn't have assigned seats, so it was a matter of fighting to get seats together that would make or break their journey. The last thing Devin or Beth wanted was to be seated next to a stranger while going through the tunnel. That much darkness? Underwater? No thank you. Hey, hi, sorry, I'm here. Kira came rushing in with a bakery box of baked goods. Of course she had gone to get breakfast. It was her personality to do kind things for others, even if it made Devin and pretty much everyone else feel inadequate. I just had to get us something to eat. I saw this great new bakery pop up and I figured, why not? It opens at 4:30, so the timing was perfect. Can you believe I was first in line? Devin could in fact believe it very easily. Only lunatics got up at 4 a.m. to go get fresh baked goods at 4:30. But she had to admit the box smelled incredible. There was something cinnamon in there and she wanted it immediately. I'll open this when the guys get here. Where are they, by the way? Kira looked around. It was 4:56. We should get in line. They're going to be opening the boarding at 5 on the dot. We don't want to miss our seating arrangements. Kira winked at Devin. It was as though they were in an inside joke, but Devin had no idea. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin boarding the 5 a.m. departure from London to Paris. Please have your tickets ready. Your luggage will be boarded under the hour and will be inaccessible to you the entirety of the trip. Please have your passports on your person at all times, as there will be a customs check when we enter France. The girls dutifully checked their purses. They stood in line towards the front and managed to board without a problem. They huddled towards the front of the bus because of Beth's motion sickness. She had taken Dramamine but wasn't sure if it would take effect quick enough. Better safe than sorry. They suffered dirty looks from the other passengers as the bus began to fill, explaining poorly that yes, they were waiting for others. All 3 seats? Yes, all 3 seats were reserved. Apologies were made, curses thrown out under their breath. At 5:07, as the driver announced the departure, the girls watched in horror as Joe, Andy, and Christian came sprinting through the bus depot, waving frantically from the ticket checker to the bus. 3 minutes later, they boarded and followed Kira's rules for partnering up. Christian breathed heavily next to Devon as she caught a whiff of his scent, the lightest hint of mint, rosemary hand soap, and Irish spring soap. Morning, Dev. He bumped his elbow against hers as the bus pulled away from the station. Hey, glad you made it. Didn't think that you would. He lowered his voice as the passengers were dozing back to sleep. Yeah, blame Joe. He decided to stop at Tesco on the way here. Tesco? For what? Did he forget toothpaste or something? Christian chuckled. Something like that. An hour or so later, Devon woke up and couldn't get comfortable. Kira hadn't lied. The seats were incredibly small. She marveled at how Christian's legs were even able to fit in the seat. The bus had stopped and it was black outside the windows. She wasn't sure what was going on, but Christian's breathing was suddenly incredibly rapid. Hey, are you okay? She leaned over and he flinched. She watched him clutch and unclutch his hands. Yep, yes. Why is it so dark out? I thought the sun rose around 6:30. Shouldn't it be light out by now? Christian stared straight ahead, but responded in short, brief sentences. He was acting really strange. We're in the Channel, aka under the English Channel, thousands of meters deep, in a tube, on a train, in a bus. Devon understood the concept of the tunnel, but why was a train involved? She assumed they would drive through it just like the Queens Midtown Tunnel in Manhattan. 10 minutes with traffic and they'd pop out into daylight. What was the big deal? Why is a train involved? Christian clenched his grip once more. You were asleep, but the bus, we pulled onto a freight train. We're basically in a moving box underneath the ocean. Oh shit. Devon wasn't prone to feeling anxious, but this wasn't the best scenario. She didn't exactly feel calm. Yes, oh shit. I'm freaking out. Devon looked at Christian. He was mildly sweaty and shaking a bit. She had never seen someone have a panic attack before. She wasn't even sure what protocol was. Shit. Okay, here, talk to me. She turned sideways in her seat. Everyone else was asleep. Kira passed out onto Joe's shoulder and Beth and Andy facing away from each other, Andy snoring lightly. Talk about what? Anything. What's your favorite color? Christian laughed. That's what you want to know about me? Devon was surprised when her internal narrative said, no, I want to know everything about you. You fascinate and excite me all at once. Instead, she said, yes, you caught me. I'm a basic bitch who only wants to know your favorite color and absolutely nothing else. My favorite color is blue. Devon pretended to think for a minute before responding. So, are you more like a navy or a cerulean person? This time, Christian genuinely laughed and she felt his knee brush against hers, neither of them bothering to move. It's your turn, and do not ask me what my favorite color is. He smirked. For the record, I'm more of a navy guy. I don't even know what color cerulean is. Let's see. What's your favorite snack? Drunk snack or life snack? Drunk snack. Those mini pizza rolls you get in the frozen aisle at CVS, I could eat a dozen of them. I'm a taquitos guy myself. They stayed like this for quite some time, neither of them caring much about the conversation as both were focused on how close their bodies were. Eventually, Devon moved to grab his hand. The shaking hadn't stopped. It was clammy and he wiped it on his pants before taking hers again. Sorry, I'm nervous. At the time, she assumed it was from anxiety about being in the channel. She was nervous too, but only one of them was allowed to lose it at a time. She'd later find out it was because he was nervous being around her. Somewhere in the conversation, they began getting sleepy. Devon closed her eyes but kept waking up, her head bobbing forward. At a certain point, Christian lifted an arm and she nestled into the crook. She didn't overthink it. She was too tired and he was comfortable, warm, safe even. She slept soundly until the border control boarded the bus to check the passports. She ignored Kira's smirk from across the aisle as Devon extricated herself from Christian's arms to find her passport. It was no big deal. They had made it through the tunnel, nothing more to it. Friday morning in Paris was a whirlwind. From Napoleon's tomb to the Eiffel Tower to the Louvre, the troupe dutifully followed Kira's lead through the streets. After a brief stop at the hostel, they reconvened for a night out. Too bad they were utterly exhausted. Guys, I am wiped. She exhaled as Christian's now familiar voice reverberated across the table. She'd been silently begging to go home, but she didn't want to be a mood ruiner. It's still so early, and it's Paris. You have to stay for one more. Kira forcefully flagged down another waiter and got another round. Devin groaned audibly. See, even Devin is exhausted. Christian gestured towards her end of the table. God, had it really been that loud? She blushed out of embarrassment and out of him shortening her name. A chill ran up her spine. In the time since Christian had been back, Devin had gotten used to him in a way that became like a sensory memory. She fed off his energy and could feel when he was upset or anxious. She knew the difference between peaceful and content. She could feel him radiate grief and joy at different levels just by standing next to him. It happened so subtly that she wasn't sure how it happened at all. The only thing that she knew was that he was a constant marker for her when it came to knowing that someone cared for her and she cared for them. It had been so long since she felt cared for. She would never tell Christian that she hadn't been in love yet. She would never tell him about all the boys she chased out of desire for attention, all the boys who couldn't and didn't want to love her back. She would never tell him that she had gotten so lonely that she didn't feel loneliness anymore. She simply felt nothing at all. She turned her attention back to the table. Kira was arguing with Christian about wanting to leave. Fine. If you guys are exhausted, at least go home together. I don't want any of us walking home alone. Christian nodded his approval to Kira and gave Devin a "you up for it" look. She nodded hastily and grabbed her bag. Have fun, you two. Had Jo just winked at Christian? She must be more tired than she thought. The long walk home. As they stepped into the cool night air, Devin shivered. Christian was a few steps ahead of her, waiting not so patiently. She noticed he was bouncing on the soles of his feet, eager to get moving. I'm coming. She closed the gap between them, dragging her tired body across the pavement. Everything about her was exhausted. From head to toe, she felt like she had been through the ringer. You look like you're going to sleep like a rock tonight, Christian observed as he scanned her. She figured she must look rough if he was saying something. Oh well, what did it matter? He would have to see the side of her sometime. I am, but first, the long walk home. She pointed towards the Eiffel Tower, still glistening. It's not that bad. I'll carry you if you get too tired, he playfully bumped into her. She gave him a delicate shove back, using all of the energy she had left. When she ricocheted off of him, she was surprised to feel his hand grab hers and pull her in close. She held her breath, waiting to see what would happen. But nothing happened. She looked down. He was indeed holding her hand. They were walking in tandem, heading towards their hostel, but he hadn't made another move. Devin wasn't used to this. She was used to being swept off her feet. Every rom-com she had ever seen prompted her to wonder why she hadn't been kissed. She wasn't even sure she liked Christian like that, but they were in Paris. This is what people did in Paris. They took romantic strolls home. They held hands and gazed lovingly into each other's eyes before falling into one another in a kiss that would leave them breathless. Currently, Devin felt breathless, but not because she'd been kissed. More so because she was struggling to keep up with Christian's long strides. His height had many pros, but one con was that Devin practically had to take 3 steps for every one of his. At the rate he was walking, she'd be in full-on sprint in no time. Hey, can you slow down a little bit? She was struggling to keep up as the alcohol and exhaustion hit her all at once. Shoot, sorry, yeah, I forgot I'm a fast walker. More like a tall walker. Christian looked at her with confusion as she gestured to the difference in their hip height. His hips started at her torso, a solid 2 inches above where hers were. The difference meant easily an extra few feet of leg for him and stunted ones for her. Hey, sorry, yeah, I forgot. I can slow down. They settled into an easy stroll as he headed towards the Eiffel Tower. Devin had seen its glittery light show approximately 5 times tonight, but it was no less magical. Are you having fun? Christian asked out of the blue. They had fallen into companionable silence, so Devin shook as she was brought out of it. Wait, did I just scare you? His brows furrowed in concern as he considered the possibility. No, not at all. It just startled me. It's a me thing. You're easily startled? Unfortunately, yes, so please don't jump out from behind a door when I'm around. I won't recover. Christian laughed lightheartedly, if half-heartedly. She knew what his real laugh sounded like. She had subconsciously memorized it during their time together before he went home. It seemed that she was attuned to him in such a way that she could now tell if and when he was being genuine, or trying his best to appear so. She was about to ask him how things had been since he got back, when she felt his hand squeeze around hers gently. She had forgotten it was there. Holding his hand was simple, easy. It felt as though she was being tethered to the ground in a way that was safe, not constricting. Devin, she looked up at him. She knew what was coming. She wasn't ready. She was not meant to be doing this here with him. Christian, Wait, Dev, seriously, you don't have to. She tried to tug her hand out of his, but he held on tighter. Devin, hold on. He stopped short, pulling her in closer to him reflexively. She took a deep breath in. It would be fine. She would tell him everything. Of course he would be mad, but he would get over it. They'd be friends once again, once it was out in the open. I don't know where we are anymore, and my phone is dead. She felt the air leave her all at once, taking with it all the anticipation she had felt. It was quickly replaced by fear. I've got my phone, don't worry. She rifled around her bag, digging through the maps, brochures, and train tickets, desperate to find the hard-shelled case, but coming up short. She looked up at him. I don't have mine either. Shit. Okay, well, where are we? Do you remember how we got to the bar? They had taken the metro from Sacre Coeur earlier in the day and popped out on another arrondissement. She had no idea how to get back to the hostel. I thought you knew where you were going. She looked at him with wide eyes of shock. I thought I did, but we're on the wrong side of the river. He pointed to the Eiffel Tower and the glistening Seine much closer to them. From our hostel to the Eiffel Tower, we run parallel to the river, but this is perpendicular, so we have to get there. I just don't know if we go left or right. Right, okay, we'll be fine. This is Paris. It's a major city. We can figure this out. Devin hoped her can-do attitude made him feel better than she felt. She was scared. They weren't technically in danger, but something about being in an unfamiliar city at night left her feeling uneasy. Let's walk towards the tower and we will figure it out from there, okay? Christian nodded in agreement as they set off straight. 2 hours and countless missteps later, they were home. Devin wearily climbed the steps to the hostel with Christian, not far behind. They had conveniently been placed in the same room per Kira's rules. It occurred to Devin that Kira was a mastermind, and she did not enjoy it. Kira knew nothing of Devin's life, and putting her and Christian in the same room was a gross overstep of her planning power. I'm glad we made it. Christian turned the key into the lock and opened the room, turning on the light. Their twin beds were across the aisle from one another, made up neatly with the hospital corner folds and a starchy cover sheet that would do little to keep either warm. Me too, but it's freezing in here. You think there's heat in this place? Devin shuddered as she thought about putting her pajamas on. The idea of taking her clothes off to put on colder ones left her nauseous. I don't know, but you're right. It's actually ice cold. No one could sleep in this. Christian ran his hands through his hair, laughing mildly to himself. What's so funny? Devin felt oddly defensive. Could he be laughing at her? Nothing. Christian, you just made me walk 3 hours through the streets of Paris in the freezing cold. Want to clue me into why you think that's funny? She watched as his face turned suddenly somber. I actually don't think that's funny. I was thinking that it's hilarious that on the one night that I have a chance to talk to you, quality time, getting to see if we like each other, I get us lost. Devin stared back at him in disbelief. Of course she had known some version of this was coming, but she hadn't known he actually liked her. She had assumed he wanted to hook up. They were abroad. What would it matter? But him wanting to talk to her signaled something deeper. Oh, wait, do you like me? She watched the blush creep up his neck to his cheeks. Really not that obvious, huh? I mean, I thought you did, but sometimes it's hard to tell with you. Well, yeah, I guess I do. I don't spend this much time with anyone else, if you haven't noticed. I had, but I also thought about the fact that you had so much going on. Liking someone would be a lot on your plate. You still haven't told me if you like me. Devin caught his eye, the intensity between them electrifying as each moment passed. She couldn't tell him. Not now, not yet. Just as she was about to respond, there was a knock at the door. I'll get it. No one knocking at 2 a.m. has anything good to be doing. Christian closed the distance between them as he opened the door. Hey! Oh, good, you guys are still awake. Beth stood sheepishly in the doorway. Devin briefly wondered if she could feel the waves of tension and sexual energy pulsating between them. Everything okay, Beth? Devin took in Beth's pajamas and toothbrush. She was still in her going-out clothes, but it looked like she had been handed a care package of toiletries. Yeah, of course. It's just that, Kira's busy, so would you guys mind if I crashed here? Christian, ever the gentleman, stepped back from the door and welcomed Beth inside. You guys take the beds. I can take the floor. Oh my god, no, absolutely not. I'm not letting you sleep on the floor. Beth looked horrified. It's fine. I'm used to it. Devin jumped in to interject. Christian, we can share a bed. We don't have enough blankets, and it's fine. Are you sure? Beth looked at her doe-eyed and cautious. Devin couldn't tell if it was an act or if she genuinely was this naive. Yes, I'm sure. It's been a long day. It's not like we'd be getting up to anything anyway. She pretended not to notice Christian's downcast eyes as Beth happily began putting her stuff down. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it. After changing into their pajamas and settling into bed, as much as they could anyway, Devon couldn't help herself. She rearranged her body so she and Christian weren't shoulder to shoulder, but instead she was a little spoon. She felt safe and warm as his hand moved to rest across her belly, drawing her in closer. She felt him nuzzle his face ever so slightly into her hair, or maybe he was simply brushing it out of his own face. Either way, she desperately wanted to know one thing. "Hey, Beth." She waited a beat to see if Beth was asleep yet. Came Beth's response from under the covers. "Who'd Kira kick you out for?" She could feel the palpable hesitation. To be honest, I'm not sure. After we got home, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, she was waiting for me with my pajamas. She didn't even open the door the whole way, but my guess would be one of the guys from the bar. Like, one of our guys? She felt Christian's hand wrap further around her, a warning sign not to pry too much. "No, I think one of the French guys we met after you left. There was one who was pretty smitten with her and walked home with us. But I could have sworn he had left before we walked into the building. I could be wrong, though." Devon murmured her agreement, but her mind continued to turn. It wasn't that she cared that Kira was hooking up with someone. It was that who she was hooking up with that mattered. Kira had spent the better part of the last 24 hours making sure she and Christian were paired off, leaving Joe all to herself. Sure, Christian was great. He was handsome, tall, he liked her, and she thought she liked him. But Joe was something else entirely. If Kira was hooking up with Joe, Devon was in big trouble.